Look, realistically, for most customers, the minimum time that you would get something up and running, you're looking at about a 3-month minimum. Now, you're not going to deploy the entire Sentral product within a 3-month time horizon. I'll be very clear on that. But if you were looking to get the basics up and running, that might be getting the core student enrollment and census data management up and running. It could be getting your attendance up and running. We really need to work out what that would be, but certainly possible to get something up and running within a matter of months. And then that gives you a foundation you can build on in coming months as time goes by.
We're talking FAQs around integrations and implementation with Sentral co-founder Ant Mawer. What are some of the common questions, and what does Sentral look like straight out of the box? All that coming up in this interview. I'm Colin Klupik. Let's get straight to it. Well, let's look at some of the questions that frequently come up in conversation when people are talking about integrations with Sentral, or even just making the transition to Sentral generally. I've got a few questions here, and going again from the very wide perspective down to a much smaller scale. Here's a very simple one. We are a small independent school of around 500 students. This looks like it could be a bit big for us. Please comment.
I think the reality is that any school, no matter how small, and I look at some of our smallest government schools that have only got 6 students, they still need an information system to be able to manage the operation of their school. Gone are the days where a spreadsheet would cut out paper-based forms. And the beauty of Sentral is that you can right-size the system to actually meet your school's needs. We've got the ability to take something as a out-of-the-box configuration. That's something you can take that and start using that out of the box if you're comfortable with our defaults. But if you want to, you can then actually adapt it as well. And so the degree to which you invest time and effort in customizing the way that you set it up and configure it really is up to what's going to make sense for your school. At 500 students, while that might be small on an independent school side of things, it's certainly by no means the smallest school that we deal with. And in fact, many of our schools are much, much smaller than that. But the key is, what do you need out there? You've got a toolkit of systems that you'll need to support the operation of your school. And how do we best support you in terms of taking that deployment approach and right-sizing it with you in partnership to get the best outcomes for your school?
Well, let's talk about the out-of-the-box experience then. Everyone loves a good unboxing. Let's say you've opened the box and you see all the modules in there that Sentral is made of. Do you need to use them all at once? It could be quite overwhelming. What if you don't want to use them all at once?
Absolutely not. And I think one of the things that we've learned quite successfully over the years is how do we take a staged approach to implementation? And again, I referenced back to earlier, we talked about the idea of managing that change impact and not overwhelming staff. And so it's really around where are the pain points in the school. So if we look at a particular customer who's looking to implement the Sentral product, where can we add the most value for them? Where are their pain points and the things that they're grappling with that are just not working well for them today? And can we actually solve some of those? So actually we give people back a little bit more headspace to actually then consider where they might go next after that. Now, working in schools, there's often a lot of things we have to work around the school timetable. So things like academic reporting, we can't change the times when that happens. And so we can be prepared though. So when you're ready to do it, you might have organized your layouts, got your setups ready to go in advance. So come that time, it's a lot easier to actually manage that when the time rolls around.
Okay, here's a tricky question. It reads that technically that all sounds good, but our staff still need to go through the change. How do you handle training and support?
Look, I think that's really critical. And I think we really have to recognize that in independent schools in particular, there isn't a one-size-fits-all model. What we do have is a framework we've developed working with hundreds of independent schools over the years that really learns from the experience of how do we understand where you're coming from. So what does your school currently do? What are they looking to do in the future when they deploy Sentral? And how do we take them on that change journey working with our teams? So typically we're working with our implementation managers who will help guide you through that implementation process, work out the right steps and modules to roll out within your school, help you work through configuring them, and then our trainers to actually get your internal school experts up to speed, deliver that training out to your staff in order to make sure that they can champion it within the school once it's deployed. And I think making sure that that's tailored to each individual school is really critical. So while we've got a framework of what we know works well, we adapt that to suit each school's circumstances.
Now, we talked a little bit about this just a few moments ago, and that's about the time frame. I've got a question here, which is the opposite of what we were talking about before. It says here, we don't have a lot of time. We need a solution quickly. What's the shortest transition time that we could expect? Could this be a one-termer?
Look, realistically, for most customers, the minimum time that you would get something up and running, you're looking at about a 3-month minimum. Now, you're not going to deploy the entire Sentral product within a 3-month time horizon. I'll be very clear on that. But if you were looking to get the basics up and running, that might be getting the core student enrollment and census data management up and running. It could be getting your attendance up and running. We really need to work out what that would be. but certainly possible to get something up and running within a matter of months. And then that gives you a foundation you can build on in coming months as time goes by.
Here's a question that speaks to your comment about engaging the parent community moving into the future. Quite simply, how does Sentral integrate with mobile? And I guess the implication there is parents will be interacting with school via mobile devices because they're out and about, or they're at work, or they're underway somewhere. How does it integrate with mobile?
Look, it's a great question. And I think for us, some years ago, we recognised that, better parent myself, most of the time parents find time to interact. We could see that from analytics data. They're typically on the go. They'll be sitting at work. They'll need to go and give permission for an excursion. They might need to go and respond to something, make a payment. And so we've invested heavily in our mobile platform for parents with a mobile app in order to allow them to do that. And that's really our first party experience in terms of where our parent experience is going now, is to make sure that as a parent, you get your push alerts there. They can see that on their phone. They can respond to the things they need to, and it's there in their fingertips. Yes, it's available on the web, so you can access it from your computer or your tablet as well. But really, we see that mobile experience where most parents typically engage with the school.
Now, another one here about making the transition. It says here it wouldn't just be from one system to another, but we also want to get into the cloud. Can you outline Sentral's cloud capabilities?
As a product that's been around for nearly 20 years, Sentral started that journey on premise, but we recognised as cloud was just starting to emerge that it was really well suited to what schools operate. You've got typically peak periods where you have higher demand, and then you have quieter periods for most of the day and certainly the evenings. And so the ability to deploy a cloud stack there was really, really appealing from that point of view in terms of being able to be responsive to end user demand. I think one of the things that's been really exciting is we've seen a lot of the legislation and policy environment in schools play catch up since we started that journey in 2013. And Sentral today is a cloud native product where we deploy and sell the product only on the cloud platform. And as part of that is really heavily investing in terms of how do we tie into other systems. And again, anybody who's used cloud platforms will recognize the idea that you don't typically just use one system in isolation. You use a suite of different products. They talk to each other through APIs. Those integrations allow you to use multiple products together in a way that the data flows seamlessly and securely between those systems. And that's really key to our approach in terms of moving forward. There is seamless data flows and management, identity centralized through a school identity management system, and tying it all together for an end user that way.
Look, I'm just going to add a little bit more to that question. In your experience, are there still schools operating on premise, as in their school management system lives on a computer in a room on the premises?
Look, there certainly are, and I think that's one of the things that we're seeing a lot of in independent schools in particular who've built up this ecosystem on their on-premise platform. So they might have databases that are sitting there in their school. They've got systems plugged into those, and the idea of actually trying to unwind all of those and migrate to a cloud platform can be something that it can seem quite daunting at the beginning. It's a journey that we're often comfortable to take customers through that process and work with them. So not just solving where does Sentral fit, but also talking about the experiences that other schools have had in terms of unstitching that ecosystem. And I think if I think about what drives most people in today's age to move away from on-premise to cloud, certainly cybersecurity plays a major role there in terms of the type of capabilities and protections and controls that we can deploy within a cloud environment where we've got a security operations team who review and monitor everything going on within the platform, compared to an on-premise system, which you largely, in most cases, deploying and just hoping that everything's okay.
Is there a use-by date for on-premise systems? How much longer do you think they can survive?
I think we will see within the next couple of years that use-by date is very much approaching us. I would say within the next 3 years for most schools, if you haven't considered something off-premise, the alternative is really they're going to have to make a very significant investment in your on-prem cybersecurity. And we're certainly seeing an increase in attacks targeting government and education agencies that increasingly being able to defend against those on-premise, it's going to become incredibly expensive and time-consuming. I think from a return on investment point of view, it'll become simply a matter of time before that's no longer economically viable.
That concludes part 2 of my interview with Sentral co-founder Ant Mawer. Be sure to check out part 1 where we talk specifically about integrations and making the transition to Sentral. There's a link in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm Colin Klupik, and we'll see you in the next one.